All right. Welcome to this October 9th, 2025 EMCO Coordination Committee meeting. You can list your name down here to sign in. We have an agenda pre-constructed, but I think it's a little bit flexible, up for grabs. So if there's anything that you all wanted to discuss that's not on here, we can move things around. It's also not an emergency if we don't get to everything today. Um, there are no bibliographic emergencies. So first, we've got updates from everybody about how your communities of practice are doing. Then we were going to check in on folder access for Google Drive, just to make sure that you all are able to peek at each other's stuff, because that might be useful for everyone. We've got some time for a conversation about Wikidata's application profiles. That community of practice has run into some really great questions about, what needs formal approval? What does formal approval look like in a situation where you're kind of a PCC group and also a Wikidata group? And we thought that it would be beneficial for everyone to sort of be in on that conversation because other groups will run into the similar questions. We wanted to identify some outstanding tasks and then talk about what makes a contribution or a project an EMCO contribution or project. I don't know that anyone knows the answer to that question, so we might have to make it up. And then we wanted to talk about when is a decent time to invite new folks to participate in the early adopter phase, and generally what's been working well and what are the pain points. This is a lot to go over, so we may not get to everything. Is there anything missing? Or anything anyone super doesn't want to talk about? Okay. WorldCat entities, do you have an update on your community of practice? Looks like Misty, you might be the person from this group right now.
I am. I saw Jill unhighlight herself, so I thought she maybe wanted to step in, but no. Okay. So we've been kind of just brainstorming a lot to see what people have for ideas on like what should be included and what maybe shouldn't be included. Like some of the ideas, I guess, kind of based on what's already set in place, and people have been thinking about what might be necessary, and things that we can maybe exclude. So that's kind of the starts of where we are, but we haven't gotten much farther than that. I think we'll have to continue with the brainstorming and maybe at some point take a vote on, and Jill, correct me if I'm wrong, or you think otherwise, but I'm guessing we'll maybe take votes on some of the ideas, possibly, or I don't know. We haven't really talked about how we'll come into agreement, all that, but I think that kind of makes sense. So we'll have to figure that out. But we are getting there in terms of, deciding what would be helpful to have for creating the entities. And that's about it.
Nice. Those are good problems to have. That sounds like you're where you need to be. The ISNI group, let's see, is Leslie here? We've met with Leslie separately. She's been feeling a little unwell recently, so maybe she couldn't make it. But the ISNI group is sort of getting together. Basically, when are we meeting? And they're still very early stages. I think that they've got one meeting on the calendar now.
Yeah, there's a
Uh,
meeting tomorrow.
yes, tomorrow. So that's happening. Things are rolling. And also of note, Michelle DeRocher is now serving on POCO as a liaison to ISNE. So coordinating with her would be good, probably. Is that new news, Jennifer, or is that just something I learned yesterday that was already happening for a long time?
Michelle had been sitting, the way I understand it is Michelle had been sitting on Poco for just a while. And
Okay.
then Michelle rolled off, and then we're like, we need her his new
Yeah.
rep. So I think that's what happened. It was just a,
Okay.
yeah.
So her longtime unofficial role is now more official.
Right. I think it's my read.
All right, Wikidata folks. Do you want to choose a speaker?
Okay, I assume nobody wants to do it. So I will do my best to give an update. Kyla, Mara, Sasha, jump in if I am saying anything that's not right. But basically, we have kind of been stalled since about September-ish. We spent the summer putting together an application profile that our thought was, because it is such a big wide world of Wikidata, it would be helpful to start by kind of mapping what parts of Wikidata sort of match up with what people might know from their name authority work. Um, and there's been a lot of good conversation about that, but also we've gotten a little bit stuck because we don't really know what approval looks like. And that's the next thing that's on the agenda. But other than that, like we've had some really lovely LD4 Wikidata sessions, talking, teaching people about Wikidata basics. Um, we had a question from the Music Library Association Linked Data Working Group last week, asking if we're planning to do works. And this is a question that we have fielded in just about every meeting that we've had so far. So I think there is a lot of interest in doing works, but I wrote back to Kevin and told him that is not something we are handling this year, probably. But I also mentioned that, not, I think there's a couple of people on the Wikidata. I think there's a couple of registry coordinators for Wikidata who only plan to do 1-year terms. So if someone from MLA Linked Data Working Group wants to be a registry coordinator next year, that would be real cool. And I think those are all of the updates that I had in mind, but Sasha, Mara, Kyla, please jump in.
Thanks, Mary. That was great, especially on the fly. Um, Anything to add, other Wikidata folks? I popped in links here to the persons and corporate bodies application profiles. Jill, you've got a hand up.
Yeah, I was wondering, I think Works is going to continue to come up for us as well because of the efforts with limited success that OCLC has been doing to create entities for Works and RDAFI things. I'm still unclear on exactly how that project is going with them. From the cataloging standpoint, it looks terrible, but I don't know what it looks like for them. But I also was wondering if anybody else saw this update from I'm trying to figure out who it was, Mark to RDA task force on something something. Hold on, I'm gonna pull it up. Give
I
everybody a
wrote
minute.
that,
That's
so I have
Crystal.
Oh, because I felt like it would be related to this, right?
to works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The biggest hurdle with that project, I would say, has been pulling entities out of Mark where they were only implied and not like explicitly stated. This is a work, this is an RDA work versus this is a bib framework. Those are very different things. So when it comes to EMCO, I think our main challenge with works is going to be data modeling differences between our registries. Wikidata's data model is really flexible, and it's conceivable that it could accommodate multiple data models by just saying, this is a work that is same as BibFrame work, and this is a work that's an LRM RDA work, and these are different classes. That could be accommodated in Wikidata. I think what OCLC is doing is sort of a Library of Congress BibFrame data model for those main resource entities, which is consistent, at least with what the Library of Congress is doing. But then we have other vendors who are using other types of BibFrame with other definitions of work and hub, opus, like all kinds of different things. So I think that it's going to probably make the most sense for EMCO to start off with everything except for works and expressions and tackle those last because they're the messiest and most difficult.
I do wonder, because we have these groups here that are working on standardization, like my experience with dealing with the vendors, right, is that they are just using machine learning algorithms to create these works relationships kind of based on their own internal deduplication softwares. Xlibris is the one I'm most familiar with because that's the one I live in. But they are also very much aligning with Wikidata because they want to be able to pull that in as linked open data. So I do think overall it will shift to this Wikidata needs to have if Wikidata goes into works and expressions, it needs to have just the reference for the OCLC ones, because OCLC is probably not going to do it the other way around. We have high hopes for what OCLC will not do, but I don't know. And then that gets into the vendor space simply by the methods of those identifiers being there, right? In the base records that they will, in theory, have eventually make use of just by their crawlers finding relationships, right? Does that make sense? Is that too much in the computery?
But I don't know if we can predict what is going to happen. It seems to me like libraries are choosing many different methods for recording these things.
Okay.
And so I don't know if, say, having WorldCat entities just be its own insular thing and then do something VOF-esque where it tries to cluster things from outside sources within itself
Yeah.
is what's going to happen. Or if there's going to be some sort of identifier hub for things like Wikidata. Um, there's also the whole Wikidata community. They might not want all these things in Wikidata. Or they might have other ideas for how things should be modeled. They might be like, well, the BibFrame model and the LRM model are both wrong. We should do it this way.
Does anybody in this group have relationships with the NISO groups? Because I do feel like this is also one of those areas where I'm like, NISO does all the standards. Maybe they can come up with identity numbers, for works that everybody can reference later. They seem like an obvious organization for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Since I feel increasingly like relying on OCLC is spotty.
I'm not sure. Is NISO part of the Library of Congress, or is their website just on the Library of Congress page?
Yeah, well, because I always forget the NISO is related to ISO, right? So NISO is the national version of the overall international group that does like ISBNs and stuff. Is that right? Oh, no, we're looking through that.
Huh. I'm not sure what it is. We'll have to look.
Okay. All right.
It has its own like executive director.
Oh, it does.
So I
So is
don't
it-
know though if it still lives under an organization, but I have been on I mean, this was like 10 years ago, but I was like on one of the committees. So I have a sense of like there is some process by which a committee or group kind of comes to be around a particular topic or issue.
Um, all right, I just, and so they're not technically part of ISO, which is the international organization that does things like ISO.
Mhm.
Is that,
So there's
Correct.
this, and then there's also, the PCC, and then there's also IFLA. And I think all these groups would benefit from communicating about how their modeling works.
yeah, I wonder if that ends up being kind of like another group to get together and come up with a where does this live scenario.
Maybe.
Um,
We probably should put a pin in that one.
yeah, sorry, guys.
Oh, that's okay. It's really interesting. But I think we're not going to solve it today.
No.
And we've got a lot of stuff on the agenda. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, sorry. I had read the report and I was the first challenge I saw was like, where do I map my work?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, cool.
It's a lot of, yeah. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
I'm glad that we're
Thank
only
you,
doing
Crystal.
persons and corporate bodies right now. All right, so we've got this EMCO early adopters phase Google Drive, and I wanted to make sure everybody is able to access this, and also to access it in a way that lets you kind of say, okay, maybe I'm in the Wikidata community of practice, but I want to peek at what the WorldCat entities folks are doing. I can have access to this and see what's going on. So poke around here, make sure that you have access to everything you might be curious about. And if you don't have that access, let us know. By listing your name here. Okay, and I popped that link into the chat. We've got some time for our Wikidata application profiles, and Mary, thank you for covering sort of what's been done so far in a nutshell. We had some emails going back and forth thinking, okay, these profiles, one of them I think got approved, right, through a vote, and another one didn't. Is that the truth, or did I just make that up?
I think it really comes down to how we define approval, because nobody actually commented on corporate bodies as much as the person's one. So I think we could say that corporate bodies is approved. It
We
seems
did,
like nobody.
we did say the corporate bodies was approved.
Sweet.
So when we emailed about people, we said corporate bodies was approved. There was one comment, we integrated it into the profile. So I think a lot of the tension now is we kind of idealized an approval process and said an approval process happened. And now we're like, maybe for people, it doesn't happen that way because it has to be kind of a living application profile.
Mhm. Thank you. And that brought up a question of, for EMCO purposes, what needs approval and what doesn't need approval. And also, what does approval look like if things do need to be approved? It sounds like most folks are leaning towards votes, but are those like simple majority votes? Are those more than that? And then I think a big struggle has been our approach to decision making in EMCO, like who gets to decide whether something needs approval or not, and who decides. So is that the registry coordinators who decide? Do registry coordinators facilitate a larger decision-making process among everybody in the community of practice? Or what role does IMAC play in that, if any? So I think those questions are open. And that's making this choice hard. Does that sound accurate to others? Okay. So, maybe let's tackle the question of, what needs formal approval and what doesn't first. Um, what do you all think?
Can I just quickly add, we talked also about having having a sort of structured review process where we're reviewing the profiles or asking for community comment every 6 months initially, and then space it out longer as we get further down the road. So I think when we're thinking about what will need approval, we should also think about what that looks like in 6 months when the profiles come up for review.
Mhm. And then also who has to do the work of integrating all those comments? Is that something that is solely on the shoulders of the registry coordinators, or is that something that can be more collective? Because I think as these profiles proliferate in various registry communities, that sounds like more work. So it might make sense to have somebody integrating comments on a volunteer basis from the community so that it's not all on the coordinators. Because this role is not meant to be the only ones having to do all this work. It's just meant to be the ones making sure that the work gets done by someone. So, do you all think that something like an application profile should have some sort of a stamp on it? Sorry, I might have just interrupted someone, but I didn't see who.
I don't know. I'm trying to, I'm working through like the fever fog. I think my question is, it's like any community of practice in EMCO can decide this is good enough for us. We're gonna go forward with it. And if it needs major changes, we'll just adapt. Maybe the concern, please correct if I'm wrong, is that EMCO exists under the umbrella of the PCC. And if the PCC writ large doesn't approve, then uh-oh. So I wonder if there's a point at which there's a more public comment period for any of this. I'll just throw that out there because maybe what I'm hearing, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that we need that extra step of the PCC is standing behind this, and we're not going to get a surprise email from someone who's like, you can't do this or something. So anyway, I'll just put that out there, shoot it down. If I'm totally off, totally fine.
So maybe part of that review process, it's a living document, maybe for the duration of the early adopter phase. And maybe at the end of the early adopter phase, we could send all these things over to POCO and say, like, hey, do you see any huge problems that you're absolutely not okay with in these?
What if
And
we
then
did it out in the open, like pretty much as soon as the coordinators and the community thought it was ready? Like
Mm,
if everyone just voted to approve this in Wikidata, these app profiles, like could we just throw it on the wiki and
That
then say this is for comment, like from the rest of a PCC or the community?
that's actually where our attention is right now. So like what is actually
Yeah.
the vote for approval? So we have, say, 300 members in this early process. Do we need 50% to approve? Do we need 80% to approve? Do we need 50% over the course of 2 weeks to approve? Since we've kind of hinged on this approval process, we're precluding ourselves from like moving forward just because we don't know what approving is. We are right now for Wikidata, we're having all the conversations and votes on the application profile in the discussions and like inviting folks into that. But we're not getting a lot of traction with people actually participating in those votes. So we didn't want to maybe approve an application profile that had big holes and then folks just kind of ended up not participating because they didn't agree with what we did. So that's where we ended up finding a little bit of a roadblock for us.
That makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
But we
If,
had Sarah, who wasn't able to be here today, another registry coordinator, emailed recently and said, what if we just say that this is our map or our application profile for the pilot? So have this as the frame. And I think that might be a really good way forward to say, look, we've integrated all these comments over these past 2 comment periods. We're going to do this now. And then at the end of the review period, we'll see how useful it was for you or what holes you found or where else we can kind of bulk it. And that way we can at least move forward.
I like that approach.
As long as we don't call it a pilot. This is an early adopters phase. We're done pilots.
Yeah. We were
But
really
yeah, but
careful
otherwise
to
perfect.
not call it a pilot because pilots end and then nothing happens with them. So we were really insistent that it not be called that so that POCO wouldn't shut down EMCO at the end of the pilot. um, so yeah, maybe I think that the comments from the voting period were all integrated or at least well considered and discussed. So it probably makes sense to say to set something like that up, maybe document it on the wiki of, this was what we had for our approval process. This is what we plan to do in the future. And, for the duration of these next 6 months, please test these profiles and give feedback when they come up for review again. But having those things documented makes a lot of sense to me on the wiki because this is something that is external and in addition to Wikidata. So something like a big Wikidata request for comment on the project page wouldn't necessarily be appropriate because it's only for EMCO. So EMCO having its own kind of consensus building would also be reasonable and maybe more efficient because Wikidata's consensus process can be fraught. So maybe we have something real clear instead, like, hey, somebody makes a proposal and then it gets voted on and you get this much time to vote and then the vote is closed and it's the simple majority wins of that, maybe. It doesn't have to be that, but just having something that is concrete, identifiable, so that next time there needs to be any sort of approval of a decision, you'll have that and it'll just be easy.
If you'd like iMac to take a look at what that is, that's fine. We're happy to do that. But honestly, we're also happy for you to find consensus amongst yourselves and just FYI us too. Like, I don't feel like we don't want to set any of you up, any of the communities to keep asking for permission. Find something that's working for your community and just do it and FYI us. Um, I think you know what you need to do, maybe, and I think we just need to let you do it. That's my own thought. But it sounds like you're already on a really great path, and I feel like, especially for the Wikidata community, where there's already a strong community and that you already kind of know how to work together, like I don't think we need to get in your way. So, if you need something specific, ask. But otherwise, I feel like what we've heard is, I think, IMAC people on the call speak up, but I'm really happy with where it's going, and nothing that's been said here today is like, oh no. Um, so Sasha, did that answer the question that you originally asked? I feel like we're dodging a little, but
No, I think that helps a lot.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the discussion. I think that sometimes it's just easier to talk for 5 minutes than it is to email and think for 20 minutes alone. So I
Totally.
appreciate the room and the space to talk it through.
Mm.
But just
Yeah.
so that I understand the conversation, so we are hoping to email the rest of the Wikidata community of practice folks about what our next steps are. And I guess it sounds like we are gonna go with Sarah's idea of saying that this will be the application profile during the early adopters phase. Was there anything else? Was it is is the message that we're gonna pass along more nuanced than that, or is that just how it's gonna be?
Sounds like that's how it's going to be. And there was also the
Yeah.
suggestion that it could come up for review at some point. So maybe making it really clear when that is to folks. And also, you probably want to include that, everything that was mentioned in the voting process has been discussed and addressed. Um, just so that no one who hasn't been paying attention to that discussion thinks that it just that a vote got sidestepped or anything like that, because that's not what's happening. What's happening is reluctance to have another vote and another vote and another vote, which is super fair. Because it sounds like consensus was pretty much established, that it just then didn't go through another voting process, which seems redundant. So maybe.
Got-
Do
Thank
you,
you.
do you guys want to come up with a method for if there is negative feedback or corrective feedback? Recording that somewhere and saying it was seen and addressed?
I think that'll be different for different communities, because for Wikidata, it's just in there. It's in the discussion, it's on the application, and you can go and see it. But that might not be so easy for ISNI or Wiki or WorldCat entities, because I don't know if the platforms are really like that. But Wikidata's platform, you can just have a discussion and it's there forever.
Yeah, I think when we take votes, we'll probably do it. SD, I think Google Forms probably.
Mm. That's a good idea, because then you can have that spreadsheet that shows all the responses.
Yeah, and then we can, save those somewhere for.
Yeah. For those of you who are here, I think that it's just the Wikidata and WorldCat entities folks. Do you feel like you have what you need to move forward with kind of establishing how your groups make decisions?
I think so, yes.
Okay, if you run into anything, or if you want IMAC to be prescriptive about it, just ask us. We don't want to tell you what to do without you asking us to do that. Okay, so let's see. Is everyone happy with moving forward from this discussion to the next agenda item, or are there things we still need to discuss? All right, thank you so much, Mary and Sasha and Kyla and Mara. That was really enlightening for everyone, and I appreciate you sharing your struggle with the rest of us. Sorry. OCLC's whining.
That was
Okay.
making me anxious whenever I see that box.
I don't have anything that's unsaved right now. I can just close
No,
this.
it's okay. I don't know why. I haven't cataloged in a year, and I'm like, oh. Anyway, back to the agenda.
I was cataloging right up until like right now. Okay.
Nice.
So, outstanding tasks and items and steps towards completion for the early adopter phase. I think we've got establishing communication mechanisms within communities of practice. I've seen that happening in Wikidata. WorldCat entities, do you have a method of communication amongst yourselves too? Like a listserv or something?
Yeah, I set up a Google group. And I think, did we
Awesome.
use that last time to distribute anything? Okay.
I'm not sure if we did. We set up monthly meetings and I don't know if you had it established yet, so I may have just done it manually, but
We can test
going
it.
forward, we can do that.
Nice. Okay, I'll check in with ISNI to see if they've done this yet, if they need some help, or if they decided on something else. And then we've also got this ways to share best practices and application profiles, etc., within communities of practice. We've got several different places. So we have a Google Drive, we have a wiki, and we also have registry tools. So like in Wikidata, I've noticed that you all have a project page linking to your resources, and that's awesome. Maybe just linking to that project page is enough for the wiki, but maybe not. How are you all feeling about your sort of documentation tools and plans for using them?
I think we're okay with that. Between the wiki itself and then the documents that we have in the EMCO Google Drive. I think that covers all of our needs.
I think there has been some conversation that hasn't necessarily come to a conclusion about how the individual projects are going to link to our overarching Wikidata project page. I mean, the physical linking is easy, but thinking about how they integrate with maybe institutional, like ongoing institutional projects that may now be contributing to our project, and how these properties sort of get tagged as part of our project or part of individual projects on the actual item. So I think it's more about what happens when all of the branches fan out and start doing their separate thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. I've been thinking about that a lot, because I have a wiki project right now that's been working with LD4, but it's not necessarily an LD4 project per se, but there is a project series on it in LD4. It's not really under my institution, but we also don't know if it's an EMCO project. So like figuring out how the actual work links in with EMCO is tough.
We've also allowed individuals to join.
Exactly.
So,
We've
so you can just be, yeah.
So what's your individual just Wikidata fun times,
Weekend, yeah.
Yeah, what's your wiki
Yeah.
weekend, and then what's MCO of that is unknown. Let's circle back to that when we get to this. And then determining how to keep statistics, or wait, let's check in with the WorldCat entities folks on your, documentation structure and needs. How are you all doing? Are you using the wiki?
It now occurs to me that I should pull up the notes from our last meeting, so I'm doing.
I don't think we have anything to document just yet. Maybe we could share that brainstorm. I mean, we started talking about it. Go ahead, Jill, but I just wanted to say, like, I don't know that we're at a spot that we have anything besides the notes, really. We might want to, again, share like I don't know what to put on the wiki because I haven't really looked at it, but if we wanted to share the cadence or a link to anything, like the notes, that could be something, but other than that, I don't
Nice.
know.
Yeah, I
Feeling
think a
like we
lot of
can-
a lot of what we've been doing is actually showing people how to use it so they at least get familiar with, and then that has led to people putting ideas in our brainstorming documents. So yeah, I don't think we have really gotten into the
Cool. That's totally fine and good. And it sounds like your needs are being met by the Google Drive so far. And that's great. If that changes, please let us know. And we'll figure out a way to help you do those things. So one of the big deliverables for the EAP is figuring out how to keep statistics. Not necessarily keeping statistics right away, but like figuring out how to keep them. What sort of thoughts have you all had on that? Have you addressed it at all? And what guidance would you like about that?
I guess one thing I was wondering, it might have also come up in one of the project meetings, but I'm kind of wondering if for the Wikidata folks, we have to maintain two different methods of keeping statistics, because I don't think that we've been saying that every person who edits an item in the name of EMCO needs to add the EMCO project tag. Personally, I've only been adding them when I'm making a new item and it seems EMCO-y. But it's definitely not going on every single item I edit. But in that case, like if PCC were interested in like how many edits were done, in the name of linked data improvement overall as part of the EMCO Wikidata early adopters phase, we would probably have to use that dashboard, which I realize people also have feelings about. So I guess, does anybody have any thoughts on like whether it's possible to simplify that, or whether like it might make more sense to define like only things that are newly created in the name of EMCO count as EMCO, or maybe if you add like 3 identifiers to an item, you should put an EMCO project tag on it?
That's an open question. I think that there's been sentiment in IMAC, at least, to be generous about what counts as an IMAC contribution and what doesn't,
Yeah.
because we want to show the full impact of working in these registries. So if we're conservative about what counts as EMCO, on the one hand, you get a better idea of what new items have been created and how many things we've really taken a large hand in, but it shrinks the perspective of, what are EMCO editors' impacts. Because I think a big part of the PCC's willingness to entertain registries outside of NACO is the fact that they're more sustainable than NACO, easier to do, easier to make edits.
I
So-
wonder if we want to do it on a similar way that PCC does with catalog records and OCLC, where like, you've got the PCC code at the top if this is defined as a PCC compliant record, right? So maybe not based at the level of edit, but whether or not the record has been checked as compliant with EMCO.
And I think we also keep our own statistics, right, for those PCC communities. So, I mean, that could be something like setting up a spreadsheet to do new and edits and having people enter their own statistics, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we still do that for NACO and SACO, right? Self-reporting.
That's what I was thinking, Misty, as well. Possibly it's self-reporting. We reach out to the community at, regular intervals and have them self-report, maybe providing Sparkle queries or providing some type of support so they can help figure out what their contributions are.
Yeah.
I really like that because then I can just grab the number of edits that I've made with my EMCO account and just call it.
Yeah.
Like I can look for how many new items I made as part of EMCO, but on my EMCO account, I'm only doing EMCO work.
Yeah, which is not true of everybody.
Yeah, that's true. That's not true for everybody, but it's very convenient for me.
So, but this might bring us back to the question of if we want these statistics to be easily queryable, we need to have a consistent way of attaching properties and values to the items that have been updated or created.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
And
I think that those dashboards do have the added benefit of you don't have to have, like, I have a sheet of paper next to me right now with like about 20 categories of different things that I'm doing tick marks for, you know? And adding EMCO to that, it would be like a few different Wikidata types of edits that I would be doing tick marks for too. Which is possible because everybody does that, right? I'm pretty sure that every cataloger has that piece of paper with um all their check marks on it. But adding to it for EMCO is a choice. We could do that, or we could do something that is, because I know like ISNI counts your edits and that's how they bill you. And so if ISNI is already tracking your edits for you, maybe that is how we report EMCO statistics so that people don't have to keep count. And maybe the same is true for Wikidata. Like if you're an EMCO participant and you're in Wikidata, then all your contributions during that time could count, or dashboards. But those are a little bit, they take some setting up and maintenance.
And getting everybody to sign up.
Yeah, I think that what probably would be necessary to have any sort of accuracy would be to get the Wikidata username of everybody in the community of practice and add them to the dashboard yourself. There's a tool in the dashboard that lets you add multiple users at once. So if you just have everybody's username and add it together, it'll track everybody for that period of time. With their permission, of course. But then you'd have, I was thinking about doing that for LD4 recently. So I was like, no, we had 39 participants and there's like 4 people tracking on the dashboard. That's not right. So
I know we had
Do-
some, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know we had a little bit of concern with the dashboards because a lot of the I know a lot of the contributions I'm making are not related to EMCO. So like when I'm going through my favorite music artists and adding all their albums and songs, like I don't know if EMCO wants those and it'll include it on the dashboard. So I think we maybe have to do some, I don't know, maybe that's a question. Are we being so generous? Is that anything that we're adding, we want to be added on there? Or do we want to refine it more specifically to like these editors doing work specifically that integrates authority work?
yeah. And then, is there benefits in having almost like a mark encoding of PCC, having the EMCO, P5008 on something means that at the time that was added, this record met these requirements. Is that better?
I like that as an idea, both for Wikidata and I think for the WorldCat entities later on, once we come up with, standards, because it's a good way when you're doing data polls to make sure you're you're grabbing approved records, kind of the same way that when we're cataloging, I'm like, I'm gonna look for the PCC version first.
Yeah,
And probably use that. I think that would be something that would be helpful, but maybe it has to wait until we all have official standards out.
I don't know.
Okay,
Probably.
it's been a while since I've done wiki editing myself, but when I was doing it, I feel like I didn't I didn't code switch. Like I didn't turn off my librarian brain that knows something about good data practice. And if I'm editing my favorite musician just on my weekend, kicking my feet up, doing the thing, and not part of EMCO, like, but I'm still following the standard and improving access, like, is PCC iMac really gonna care? Like, I'm wondering, like, you still made a contribution. iMac people, and
And I just have my reaction to Sasha's example was that, well, if you are updating the artist and the artist, the updates you make fit the profile, then great. But if you're adding the songs, then the songs are currently out of scope
true.
for the profiles we've created in the early adopter phase. And so then you will get a bunch of items in your
Mm.
statistics that are out of scope, not the type of entity that we're working on. That's the bigger issue to me.
I think that a dashboard will let you
I
decide.
was I was hoping you would say this. I
uh,
wasn't sure.
like it gives you, where's my dashboards? Derp, 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 derp.
I'm so drawn to bright colors. I love this.
It's really fun doing LGBT stuff because you can just really rainbow up all of your things, which I
That's
like.
great.
Okay, so here's the edits. We had 51 total edits tracked. So if I want to look at the edits, I think that there's a way to do that. There has to be, right?
It definitely is. It might be activity.
Activity, yeah. So we've got all these things that, yeah, these are all the things that have been added. So we could export this and determine which ones are humans, which ones are corporate bodies, using Sparkle because we've got all the Q numbers here that we edited. We can see more. So I think also when you have a dashboard, I think that you can edit the dashboard. Like here's one that I've got. Can edit this. And it says tracked wikis. Oh, track namespaces. That's a little different. It gives you which namespaces you want to track, but it doesn't have specific types.
No, but that idea with the Q numbers is really interesting. I think using those Q numbers and then Sparkle querying to see if it fits into human or corporate could give us pretty accurate numbers.
Yeah, and then, if I'm on my own time and I'm like editing some baseball players' statistics or whatever, because I like to coach baseball in my own time, that's fine. I'm probably not breaking any EMCO rules when I add information about whatever Cal Raleigh or something, who we're super proud of right now.
I have another question kind of related to this. So you're saying as long as whatever you're doing, as long as it fits the EMCO parameters and standard, is there a way to evaluate the standard though? Because like as we've talked, people keep asking repeatedly, like who's checking these records? Who's making sure they're good? Nobody?
No.
That's on you. So are we just taking it on faith that people will be following the standard we have set out?
I think so.
Okay.
And I think we can frame that as this is identity management rather than authority control. You know, we're not, because if we had to review everything that everybody was doing, oof, um, who's going to do
Another
that?
committee.
That's another committee. That's also another NACO, and that's a bottleneck that we have
hmm
for our work. And we don't, the whole point of this is not to have that. We
Yeah.
could do things like validation. Like we could look at everything from a tool like a dashboard. Like there's checks or shackle validation that can be built into Wikidata that my old colleague Theo was doing some stuff on, and I think I still have his notes. But we could do something like, hey, take all of these Q numbers that were edited by EMCO folks during this time period, check it against this checks or shackle, whichever, I think it's checks actually, and then give us the results. And then what we do with those results is step 2.
I would actually love that coming from, for other future projects when we're looking at reviewing and remediating some of the wiki data that we're using. If there was something that could go in the record that was like validated by EMCO indicator, that would be helpful for some future wiki data projects we'll probably be doing.
Okay. So we haven't discussed yet what makes a contribution or project an EMCO contribution or project, and I feel like that is the question of the hour, and we've got like 2 minutes left. So maybe we should discuss these things asynchronously as much as we can. I think we probably have a lot of things going on in our communities right now where people are making edits that could count and they just don't know if they count or not. So perhaps we draft some sort of documentation that people can refer to decide whether something is EMCO or not EMCO. Sort of related to statistics keeping a little bit. How do you all feel about having this discussion asynchronously? Okay, I see thumbs ups.
We can try.
Yeah, we could try.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
then,
We can try, and maybe if it gets messy, we can put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
yeah, I think either way, we'll need it on the agenda for the next meeting. And then taking on new participants. Do you all feel that you could use some more time before we open up a call for new participants? Or do you feel ready to have more people, however many they are, added to your communities?
I think my concern would be with new people would be how much training they might be looking for or want from us again.
Mhm.
We did that month. It was a lot of work. I don't want to do it again.
Mhm.
I also think following the academic year, opening things up at the end of the academic year rather than in the middle is probably good.
That was a good point about training too, because like Anne's in the middle of showing us how Meridian works. So once we get done with that, are we gonna have to start all over again and have everybody who's already joined go through it again?
Yeah, we'll probably need to put together some like very basic tutorials for all of our different communities to practice where people can look at a video. Like watch this video of Anne using WorldCat entities, instead of Anne having to take, a few hours of her time every time there's a new batch of volunteers. Okay, so it sounds like we'll wait for a while. And maybe once we've got statistics figured out, got some tutorials together, then we'll do that call. So all right, it's 2:00. Let's wrap up this meeting. Are there any closing remarks before we adjourn? Okay. we will send out an email with those asynchronous discussion points and see what folks think. Thanks for your time, everybody.
And
Awesome.
thank
Thanks.
you, Crystal. It was very serendipitous that you were on here.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
was-
Yeah, I'm glad that you read the marked RDA stuff. That was
Yeah, I did, and I'm excited about it. Also because Ex Libris has been so confusing on this matter because